Armenia said it will hold joint military exercises with the United States from August 12 to 20. The Armenian Ministry of Defense said that the Eagle Partner 2025 exercises held in Armenia will involve soldiers from the Armenian Armed Forces Peacekeeping Brigade, the United States Army, Europe and Africa, as well as the Kansas National Guard. The exercises are designed to prepare for and carry out peacekeeping tasks with an emphasis on medical evacuation procedures.
While Russia is busy in Ukraine, Armenia has made a bet that could blow up in Putin's face. What you just saw is news that must be really bothering the Kremlin. Because in a few days, American soldiers will set foot on Armenian soil to conduct joint military exercises. But this isn't just a military exercise. It's Armenia turning its back on Russia after 30 years of an alliance that never worked. And behind all of this, there's a gamble that could really pay off. Or go very wrong for Armenia. Let me show you what's really happening. To understand why Armenia made this radical decision, I need to tell you about something that happened a few years ago. More precisely, in 2023. Imagine the scene. In less than 24 hours, more than 100,000 Armenians fled their homes in Nagorno-Karabakh, a separatist region with an Armenian majority that had declared independence from Azerbaijan more than 30 years ago. Entire families abandoning everything they had, carrying only the essentials. It was the end of 3 decades of Armenian control over this region that they considered their historic homeland. And where was Russia, Armenia's supposed ally and protector? Simply, watching that moment was the last straw. But the truth is, it's that Russia had already failed Armenia before. In 2020, when Azerbaijan attacked and reconquered large parts of Nagorno-Karabakh, Putin stood by and did nothing. In 2022, when Azerbaijani forces invaded sovereign Armenian territory, the Russian military alliance, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, didn't lift a finger. So I ask you, what's the point of a security alliance that doesn't protect you when you need it most? The Armenian Prime Minister, Nikol Pashinyan, is not a man who hides his frustrations. In public, he began to openly question whether the Collective Security Treaty Organization really served Armenia's interests. But Pashinyan went far beyond words. He began a calculated process of disengaging from Russia, which surprised even military analysts. First of all, Armenia stopped participating in Collective Security Treaty Organization military exercises. Then it withdrew its permanent representative from the organization. That's when, in February 2024, the final blow came. Armenia formally suspended its participation in the Russian military alliance and stopped paying its contributions. But there was an even more symbolic move coming. Pashinyan did something that few leaders in this post-Soviet space have dared to do. He expelled the Russian border guards from Yerevan airport and from strategic points on the border with Iran. These were not just military positions. They were symbols of Russian control over Armenia's gateways. And then a new problem arose. Creating a security vacuum like this is dangerous. Armenia was betting that it could attract new protectors before its enemies took advantage of its vulnerability. And that's exactly what started to happen. The United States didn't waste any time. The Eagle Partner exercises, which you saw in the news at the beginning of this video, are not the first ones. They have been happening for a few years, but now they have gained a much greater significance. American soldiers from the Europe and Africa Command, along with the Kansas National Guard, are training with Armenian forces on Armenian soil. The official goal is to improve peacekeeping capabilities, but everyone suspects there's much more at stake. The European Union has also entered this game. In March 2025, the Armenian parliament passed a law for integration into the European Union, something unthinkable just a few years ago. And with that, the Europeans placed observers on the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan, in addition to promising 270 million euros in financial support. Now, consider that Armenia is a country with only 3 million inhabitants. That's quite a lot of money, but there's a limit to how far the West is willing to go. No one is offering Armenia what it really needs, a real security guarantee, like NATO protection. And do you want to know why? Because that would mean coming into direct confrontation with Russia, Turkey, and Azerbaijan. And that's a line that the Americans and the Europeans are still not willing to cross. And this is where this story gets really interesting. Because behind all these military and diplomatic moves, there's a dispute over something that seems simple: a road. I'm talking about 43 kilometers of Armenian territory that could completely change the geopolitical map of Eurasia. This strip of land in southern Armenia would connect Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan enclave, which borders Turkey. It may seem minor, but the implications are significant. This route would be part of what is called the Middle Corridor, an ambitious transportation network that would connect China to Europe, passing through Central Asia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. And most importantly, this route would completely bypass Russia and Iran. Can you imagine why Russia and Iran don't like this idea at all? Azerbaijan wants full and unrestricted access through Armenian territory. They call it the Zangezur Corridor. And they demand that it be extraterritorial. In other words, without Armenian control over who passes through there. It's as if it were a piece of Azerbaijan cutting Armenia in half. Armenia obviously rejects this idea. They propose something called the crossroads of peace. In other words, they're saying, okay, you can pass, but under our rules, with our customs controls, like any normal border. For them, it's a matter of basic sovereignty. And in this deadlock, Trump comes in with a proposal that no one expected. The Trump administration is proposing that an American company manage this corridor for 99 years. Yes, you heard that right. The informal idea is that this company would control the entire operation of the route, including security. And at times like this, I know many of you must be wondering, okay, but how would they guarantee security? With approximately 1,000 American mercenaries. And in this scenario, the profit division would be like this: 40% for the American company, 30% for Armenia, and 30% for Azerbaijan. But there's something quite controversial about this proposal. These mercenaries would be authorized to use force to preserve the integrity of the corridor. This means that a private American military force would effectively control a piece of Armenian territory. And for Armenia, this is a terrible dilemma. On one hand, it solves the security problem. After all, the Americans would protect the corridor from any Russian or Iranian interference. On the other hand, it means handing over control of strategic territory to an armed foreign company. This proposal from Trump has a clear geopolitical logic. The United States would kill several birds with one stone. They would replace Russian influence in the region, create a barrier to the north of Iran, guarantee American control over a $1 trillion trade route, and on top of that, still make money in the process. The problem is that this isn't just a dispute between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Everyone has something at stake in this small 43-kilometer strip. Turkey sees this route as the fulfillment of a very old dream. to territorially connect all peoples of Turkic origin. That's because there are several countries with Turkish populations spread from Turkey to Central Asia. Places like Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. Turkey has always dreamed of having a direct land connection with these brother countries, creating a sort of Turkish bridge that goes from Istanbul almost to the border with China. That's why the Turkish president, Erdogan, has so strongly supported Azerbaijan, because this corridor would be the missing piece to physically connect the Turkic world. Iran, on the other hand, is desperate to prevent this from happening. They already have Israel and Azerbaijan as enemies on their borders. If this route is built, Iran would be completely surrounded by forces they consider hostile. In addition to losing its vital land connection to Europe through Armenia. And what about Russia? Well, Putin can't allow a route controlled by the Americans to replace the routes that pass through Russian territory. It would be the definitive end of Russian influence in the southern Caucasus region. And there's yet another layer to this story that makes everything even more complicated. Trump is trying to expand the Abraham Accords to include Azerbaijan. For those who don't know, these accords were a major diplomatic victory for Trump during his first term. He managed to get Arab countries like the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Morocco to officially make peace with Israel, something that seemed impossible for decades. Now, Trump wants to bring Azerbaijan into this group of countries that are friends with Israel. And do you want to know why this matters? Because Azerbaijan already has a very close relationship with Israel. They buy Israeli weapons and share intelligence information against Iran. Formalizing this alliance through the Abraham Accords would create a belt of countries aligned with Israel right on Iran's border, leaving the Iranians even more isolated and pressured. But there's one condition. Azerbaijan can only join the Abraham Accords if it first signs a peace treaty with Armenia. This means that Armenia's fate is now tied to a much bigger diplomatic game involving Israel, the Arab countries, and the rivalry with Iran. For Azerbaijan, this complexity provides strong motivation to reach an agreement. For Armenia, it means that its survival depends not only on what happens in the Caucasus, but also on how the rivalry between Israel and Iran unfolds in the Middle East. So, where is all this going to end? Look, there are basically three possible scenarios, and none of them is guaranteed. The first scenario is what we can call coercive. Armenia ends up giving in to Azerbaijan's main demands. They allow some kind of extraterritorial corridor, make the constitutional changes that Azerbaijan demands, and a peace treaty is signed. This would bring the much-desired stability to the region. The second scenario would be that of a new frozen conflict, a scenario where negotiations stall indefinitely. Tension remains high, with border clashes and occasional steps. Armenia continues its slow movement toward the west, but remains in a state of high vulnerability. Azerbaijan maintains its pressure, using its military superiority as a constant leverage. The third scenario, and perhaps the most dangerous, is a new war. Peace negotiations completely fail, and Azerbaijan decides it will wait no longer. They simply invade southern Armenia to forcibly open the corridor. That would be a disaster because it wouldn't just be between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Iran, which desperately needs to maintain its connection with Armenia, could enter the war to protect its border. Turkey, which supports Azerbaijan, could also get involved. Suddenly, we would have a gigantic regional war, right in the middle of one of the most explosive regions in the world. As you can see, Armenia is walking a tightrope. They are trading 3 decades of Russian dependence for the hope of Western protection. If it works, Armenia could emerge as a truly sovereign country, integrated with the West and protected by American and European guarantees. If it goes wrong, they could end up worse off than before, without Russian protection, without firm Western guarantees, and vulnerable to pressure from all sides. What makes this story fascinating is that it goes far beyond Armenia. It's like a summary of everything that's happening in the world today. Russia losing power, the United States and China fighting over trade routes, Israel and Iran facing off, and small countries trying to survive in the middle of all this chaos. And you, what do you think? Is Armenia making the right choice by switching from Russia to the United States? Or could this gamble turn into a disaster? Leave your opinion in the comments, subscribe to the channel for more geopolitical analysis like this, and share the video so more people can understand what's really happening in the world. See you next time.